Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, I'm bringing you guys Week 13 tight end start or sit decisions for fantasy football in 2020. Inside of this video, we are going to be going over every single game from Sunday's football games all the way to Tuesday night football and talk about whether I would start or sit the tight ends in each and every single matchup. So before we get into this, if you guys are new, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win that 2020 Fantasy Football Championship, as well as if you are not new, you've been here for a while, I really do appreciate you. If you could please hit that like button, that would really help me out as well. Before we get into it as well, I'd like to give you guys a quick word from my friends and my sponsor over at OverlayDFS.com. OverlayDFS.com is my favorite way to play daily fantasy sports on the interwebs. They do have two options on their website, the progressive tournaments as well as the matchup shop. But my favorite place to make that young moolah, like my name was Lil Wayne, is on the matchup shop. It's pretty simple. Who scores more fantasy points? Some examples from Monday Night Football. Miles Sanders, -9 fantasy points, or Boston Scott, +9 fantasy points. DK Metcalf -0.5 a point, or Tyler Lockett +0.5 of a point. It is so simple. You can put up as much money as you want, and it is so easy to win. Anyone could do it. You guys do research all week long to win your fantasy football matchup, so why not win some extra cash on top of it on OverlayDFS.com. Again, make sure you guys check it out, OverlayDFS.com. And we are back. Let's get into it. Week 13, tight end start or sit decisions. We begin with the Cleveland Browns at the Les Titans, and in this one, I like both tight ends in this matchup. Austin Hooper, while he had a rocky road of a start like the fucking ice cream, he's actually been pretty good as of recently, and up against the Titans, they aren't the softest defense ever, but they're not the greatest defense ever as well. We have seen them really crumble late in games, aside from last week, where they just laid the murder game down on the Indianapolis Colts. I like the Austin Hooper pick here this week up against the Titans. For the Titans, I do like Jonnu Smith as well. The tight ends are very much top-heavy this season. I've pretty much explained this in every single video. There really aren't like a top 10 tight ends that are consensus on a weekly basis. There's just like 6-7 guys that are always up there, and the rest is just a smorgasbord of other fucking guys that get put inside the top 10, top 12 on a weekly basis. Jonnu Smith is one of those guys that I feel very confident in on a weekly basis. Whether or not he performs every single week and scores that touchdown, puts up like 12, 15 points, is definitely up in the air. But in a matchup where I think that this is going to be a closer kind of game between these two teams, I think Jonnu Smith will be able to get it done this week. Next game here, we got the Las Vegas Raiders at the New York Football Jets. And in this one, obviously, I like Darren Waller. Darren Waller is one of those guys that's a top 3 tight end on a weekly basis, now going up against one of the worst defenses in the whole NFL in the New York Football Jets. This should be a Darren Waller smash game. I understand last week, the Oakland Raiders, or the Las Vegas Raiders, I should say, got their shit slammed in. They got hit with the John Cena, you can't see me finisher by the Atlanta Falcons, but I expect a humongous bounce back here up against the Jets, and I think Darren Waller should be fine. Chris Herndon for the Jets is one of the most criminally underused tight ends in the NFL, so he's going to be a sit for me. The guy has the talent to be one of those top 5 guys, personally, in my opinion, but without him, dumbass Gaze, the guy who's too busy skiing the slopes, if you know what I'm saying, snorting that booger sugar, to be paying attention to give the ball to Chris Herndon, it's unreal. Chris Herndon is amazing, but he never gets the ball, so he's a sit for me. Next game here, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Minnesota Vikings. You like that? Kirk Cousins versus Mike Glennon. In this one, I like Kyle Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. Now, if we all know, Kyle Rudolph, for some reason, starts lighting it up in December all the time. Why is that? That's because he's got to get in line to be with Santa Claus on Christmas. Shout out to my boy, St. Nicholas. Kyle Rudolph here is in for a big spot up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. While I don't love him every single week, I do feel safe throwing him in here in a very easy matchup where he could likely find the end zone this week. Tyler Eifert is going to be a sit for me because he hasn't really been start-worthy since he was in Cincinnati with Andy Dalton like 4 or 5 years ago. Next game here, we got the Bengals at my Miami Dolphins. In this one, it's definitely dependent to me if Tua Tagovailoa starts or if Ryan Fitzpatrick starts. Now, I would still fire up Mike Gesicki in this matchup regardless of the quarterback, but in my opinion, I feel much more confident with Gesicki getting hammered the ball from Ryan Fitzpatrick versus Tua Tagovailoa. Now, that definitely would mean Gesicki would probably have top 5 potential this week, given Ryan Fitzpatrick starts. If not, he's more of a top 12 tight end with definitely some upside here, going up against the bum-ass Bengals defense. Drew Sample going up against a tougher Miami Dolphins defense. I don't like that matchup at all. For Mr. sample, especially since obviously Joe Burrow is not starting because the man tore his ACL. Next game, here we got the Colts at the Houston Texans, and in this one, I like Trey Burton. Now, Trey Burton is kind of on the tipsy-turvy edge from where I'm going to start a guy and where I'm going to be sitting a guy. And here up against the Houston Texans is definitely a smash matchup for Trey Burton. Trey Burton has been pretty solid this season. Obviously, they kind of have a carousel at the tight end position. Mo Alley Cox was getting use. Jack Doyle at the beginning of the year. Now it's been really Trey Burton as of recently. And we know Phillip Rivers loves that tight end. That's why the man has 11 kids. The man is a legend at having sex, and he's also a legend at throwing the ball to fucking tight ends. So I love Trey Burton here up against the Houston Texans. Jordan Atkins, I don't love him really ever. I just don't trust him. I feel like now, though, with the open spot of Will Fuller missing in these games, Jordan Atkins could definitely take that next step up and be worthy of starting in fantasy football for the next couple of weeks. But this week, I'd rather stay back, lay back, and wait to see what happens on Sunday before I go ahead and put all my money on Jordan Akins. Next game, here we got the Lions at the Chicago Bears, and TJ Hawkinson has really came out of kind of nowhere this season and been amazing. Last year, this guy was a one-game wonder. Early in the season, he had one smash game where he absolutely butt-fucked a defense without the use of any lube, and as of later in that season, did literally nothing. He was just irrelevant. But as of recently, this whole season, he's been a very, very consistent tight end for fantasy football. And here, even going up against the Bears defense, I expect another smash start out of TJ Hawkinson. Jimmy Graham was very good with Nick Foles, but with Mitch Trubisky, he just doesn't get the looks that Nick Foles gazed into his eyes and would throw him the ball. They had a nice, lovely stare off, but Mitch Trubisky, he'd rather be looking at a rack of titties because he loves to kiss those titties, as you guys know. Jimmy Graham, just not a titty, I guess. Even though that man has a bald head, all you got to do is put a nice nipple on there, and maybe, just maybe, Mitch Trubisky will throw you the ball. Next game here, we got the Saints at the Atlanta Falcons, and in this one, Jared Cook has literally fallen from the graces of potentially being start-worthy once Taysom Hill got in the game. Taysom Hill says, no, motherfucker, I'm the only tight end out there, and he doesn't throw the ball to Jared Cook, which is obviously big tough for you if you have Jared Cook. He just really hasn't been all that relevant with Taysom Hill starting. Hayden Hurst did have a down game a couple of weeks ago, put up a goose egg, but then he bounced back last week up against the Las Vegas Raiders, and I expect him to continue on the train of being good. He's really only had one down game thus far this season, but a very reliable tight end for fantasy football thus far. Next game, here we got the New York Football Giants at the Seattle Seahawks, and ever since third leg Greg got hurt, now they run the carousel of tight end in Seattle with Jacob Hollister and Will Dissly. And it's really kind of unpredictable which one of these guys is going to end up being the productive tight end in this offense. So I would just go ahead and sit both of them, considering Russell Wilson isn't a huge tight end guy. Evan Ingram, on the other hand, while he has had those up games, he's had those down games, he's been straight up fucking unpredictable this season. He'll have a game where he absolutely skull fucks a defense. Then the next week, the guy's sleeping on a goddamn Tempur-Pedic. So Evan Ingram is going to be a start for me this week up against the bum Seattle Seahawks defense. We saw Dallas Goedert look effective up against them last week, and I think Ingram is this week up against the Seahawks. If you guys have ended up enjoying this video thus far, please make sure that you guys do hit that subscribe button down below. Rams at Cardinals. I'm sitting all the Titans in this one for the Arizona Cardinals. Dan Arnold, the Arnoldinator. Dan Arnold has actually shown some promise in the last couple of games, been kind of utilized in this team, but again, if they kind of aren't scoring as many touchdowns like last week where they're running the ball a decent amount, Arnold is kind of going to get cucked out of some points, so I wouldn't really be looking to start Dan Arnold. Gerald Everett, as well as Tyler Higbee. The dream Tyler Higbee down the stretch of last season was just immaculate. He was fucking beautiful. Fuego, magnifique down the stretch. And then, as of now, this whole season, he's been complete shit besides that one game where he had 3 touchdowns. So he's a guy you just have to stay away from, especially when Everett, however you want to say his name, is active. So they're going to all be sits for me in this matchup. Next game, here we got the New England Deflatriots at the Los Angeles Superchargers. And in this one, I'm going to fire up Hunter Henry. With Justin Herbert, Hunter Henry has looked a lot more productive this season. This matchup up against the Patriots should be a relatively high-scoring affair, and with such a big tight end, a guy who you would like to score on a weekly basis, I feel like he's definitely worthy of a start here up against the Patriots. The Patriots just don't have a good tight end. Ryan Izzo is nothing special, so he's going to be a sit for me this week. He just does not get the ball all that often. Next matchup, here we got the Eagles at the Cheeseheads, the Green Bay Packers. In this one, I like Robert Tonyan as well as Dallas Goedert. Goedert. Dallas Goedert has been pretty solid, even though Carson Wentz's play has been mishmash. I mean, in reality, this guy has good games, and then other games he looks like complete shit. Last week up against Seattle, this guy did not look good at all, and Goedert was still able to produce. The Packers' defense is pretty solid, but against the tight end, they do get a little wishy-washy, so I think Dallas Goedert should be in for a big game here. Robert Tonyan is one of those guys, again, where it's such a top-heavy position at tight end that you throw him out there and hope he gets like 8 to 12 points. We have seen Tonyan have excellent games. We've also seen him have huge down games. He scored 3 touchdowns up against Atlanta, and I think the next week he scored like 4 fantasy points. So it's definitely tipsy-turvy outside of those top 5 tight ends, but I'm still confident in Tonyan this week up against the bum Eagles. Next game here, we got the Sunday night football matchup between the Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. And in this one, horsecock Drew Lock is likely going to be suiting up. We no longer have to deal with a backup fucking practice squad wide receiver playing quarterback for the Broncos. So Noah Fant will be the starting tight end in this game, obviously. And with Drew Lock back under center, I feel like Noah Fant is definitely a very good play this week, even up against a tougher defense in the Chiefs. Travis Kelce, it's a no fucking brainer. You don't even have to think about it. The guy's locked and loaded in your tight end spot on a weekly basis, in for another probably humongous game here up against the Broncos next game. Here we got the football team of Washington at the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Eric Ebron, just like Deontay Johnson, must have just had glue, not even glue on his hands. The opposite of glue. He had like lube on his hands or something, because the ball's getting thrown this guy's way on that Tuesday or Wednesday night football game, Wednesday afternoon football game against the Ravens, and they're just dropping the ball. Eric Ebron probably could have had a touchdown, if not a bunch more catches in that game, and he ultimately kind of fucked you in the ass. But here up against the Washington football team, he should be in a much better spot. I highly doubt he's going to have just not being able to catch the ball-itis or whatever you want to call it. So I think Ebron should be in for a pretty solid game here. Logan Thomas up against the Steelers seems very scary to me. Any wide receiver or tight end up against the Steelers is scary, so I'm going to let Logan Thomas ride the pine for me this week. Next game here, we got the first of 2 Monday night football games. So this is the Monday afternoon game. Bills at 49ers. In this one, I like Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed is just one of those tight ends that is fucking immortal. He's a guy that a lot of people talk about as one of the better tight ends in the league a couple of years ago. Now he's kind of past that, but he's still definitely a solid tight end to start for fantasy football, especially since the 49ers like to throw the ball to the tight end, and it's heavily designed in the playbook. And the Bills' pass defense hasn't really been that great this season. They were pretty hot last year going into the playoffs as well. But as of recently, this season as a whole, they haven't been that great. And Jordan Reed, again, gets heavily designed plays in the playbook because the plays are for George Kittle. But Jordan Reed, obviously not fucking George Kittle, probably would have been comparable a couple of years ago where Jordan Reed was just on top of the world as a Washington wide receiver. I mean, Washington tight end. But here in San Francisco, he's pretty used as well. I like him here up against the Bills. Dawson Knox is going to be a sit for me. Dawson Knox one time if you're with me. He just hasn't been getting that much use in Buffalo. Ross Dwelley is kind of cucked by Jordan Reed in San Francisco. Final game here, the Tuesday night football special, because who doesn't love some football on Tuesday between two teams that you don't want to watch at all. Dalton Schultz will be a sit for me in this matchup because the Ravens defense is definitely pretty legit up against tight ends, so I don't feel ultra confident in Schultz this week. Luke Wilson. Will Mark Andrews play? Probably not in this matchup. If Mark Andrews plays, he's a smash start here, in my opinion, but I doubt he does due to the Rona protocol, so Luke Wilson is going to be a sit for me as well. He dropped a touchdown in the end zone, got that shit yeeted out of his hand, and they kind of lost the game because of it. So Luke Wilson's going to be a sit. Dalton Schultz as well. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Again, not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win that 2020 Fantasy Football Championship. I do love you all. Thank you guys all so much for making it through this whole video. And I'll see you beautiful bastards either later or tomorrow with all of the rankings videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you all. Have a great rest of your guys' day. Overlaydfs.com. Good boy!